let's jump into some questions. Now, as I always have to say, the views and opinions of Randy do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of New Leaf Publishing Group, Master Books, any of its subsidiaries, or Kristen Pratt or my children. So just so that there's an indemnification of everybody else, that everyone knows they're not responsible for the things that I say. So good. Okay. How do you help a child with getting their ideas in their head on paper? Son's going into 5th grade. He can tell you his ideas, but when he has a hard time writing them down when he thinks. B Scribe. I have videos on mind mapping for anybody who struggles to get all of the noise up here out to paper. Mind mapping is by far one of the best ways, a framework to use to do that. And once you get it out there, I've shown in some of the videos how, like, very quickly, I can do up a paper on almost anything because I just start creating mind map, and then I organize my thoughts, and then I expand on it. So I would recommend that. And if there's an issue finding it, then maybe we could do a session or seminar on how to mind map, because I think that that's one of the more valuable ways we can teach children to think, especially children who just struggle going from point A to point B. All right. Montana Mama, what advice would you give a homeschool mom who feels like she's shortchanging her kids if she is not following a certain method completely? Charlotte Mason, classical, etc. How does one fight against comparison in the mindset that if we do things just so, then if we don't do things just so, then we are messing them up? I've never had that problem because I've always been a little bit of I've pushed against the box and taken pride in being outside the box. But change the mindset. Like, I'm a good girl if I do what I'm told. Okay, but when you're 3 and you're told that sets up a certain framework for your brain. And then your brain never actually sometimes struggles to move from, I'm a good girl if I don't cause issues. I'm a good girl if I stay quiet. I'm a good girl if I'm pretty. I'm a good girl if I make my parents look good. All of these things, right? That's the mindset that you begin to fight against. And so the 3-year-old who's told that now needs permission to say, right? Like, I'm a good person if I'm creative. I'm a good person if I try different things, and failure is good. Failure is how we learn, right? Experience, good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. So I have to have tried some things and failed to know what works for me. Most of what I talk about has been built on years of failure. And I continue to fail. I continue to be a failure. Who cares, right? Like, that's how we do things. And like, there are different pedagogies. Just like pedagogy is a way of teaching, the way of the philosophies that I would use for teaching. There are also a lot of different ways to drive to New York from Arkansas. What's the destination? And what's the flavor or the path that I take to get there? But Montana Mama, you got to almost kind of give yourself some permission to say, listen, I'm just going to give myself permission to fail. And I believe that the Lord knows me. He knew me when he gave me the kids, and he knew me when he called me to homeschool, and he knows what my kids need. And maybe my kids need me to not be perfect. Maybe my kids need me to give them permission to mess things up a little bit. And I'm not saying we don't strive for excellence. What I'm saying is many times we don't actually achieve excellence because we're so worried about messing things up that we don't go beyond the safe zone. Now, the safe zone sometimes protects us, but sometimes the safe zone is too safe. right? And it's not in the realm of where we should be going. So, Charlotte Mason. Oh, that's great. Charlotte Mason she had a lot of good things to say. She was from the 1800s, and she was part of education reform 150 years ago. Awesome. We've learned a lot about children since then. And while some of her philosophies are excellent, that doesn't mean that some of the newer philosophies don't also bring value. And so hybrid and adapting and making things your own, create the Montana Mama philosophy of homeschool. So use influences and you become the expert. Classical. Okay, so classical had its approach, and some people idolize some of these philosophies. There are things to be taken from all of it, but I guess I would give yourself some freedom there. So, Michelle, just not how I thought it would go. Can I address it? I want to address that, Michelle. Right? I'm assuming not how you thought it would go. You think about the children of Israel in Egypt, right? At one time, the children of Israel, Egypt became their place of salvation. Like he had brought Joseph in as a slave, and Joseph becomes second in command in Egypt, and the famine happens, and Joseph's family ends up coming to Egypt, and that's where they're saved, and they do well in Egypt for a time and a season. And then over the period of, 400 years, they become slaves, and it becomes very oppressive. And then the Pharaoh in charge even begins murdering their children. And you're like, if you dwell on Egypt, sometimes you could look and say about the Lord that, well, this is cruel, right? Like there should be blessing in the land of Egypt. We've worked hard, and we deserve something, right? That unpleasantness is what makes the children of Israel willing to leave Egypt. If it hadn't grown unpleasant, they weren't coming back to Canaan, and Canaan was what they were supposed to be in the first place. So sometimes we get hung up on the fact that we're presently in Egypt, and the Lord is like, okay, I'm going to have to make this a little bit unpleasant, so you're willing to actually move forward into the next place the Lord has for us. And the valleys sometimes, or the wilderness between this unpleasant place to the place the Lord has, can be very confusing, and it can be a challenge. However, we have to know Romans 8:28 is truth. All things work together for good for those of us who love Him and are called according to His purpose. All right. Good. All right. Hey, it's 3:52, and I got through all the questions. I hope you enjoyed teaching tips today. I enjoyed being back in the seat and answering questions. It's always fun to think through. It is definitely an area where my brain comes alive, and I enjoy that. So hopefully we'll be back in the flow again, and providing help. So, all right, awesome. Well, thank you guys, and God bless you and your families. I pray you have a fantastic weekend, and I hope you're ramping up for a fantastic school year. All right, God bless you.